The Valiant Dojo, renowned among the upper-class elite as a place to cultivate both physical strength and gentlemanly virtue for privileged white sons. Located in the heart of the city, its 3-story glass and wood building wasn't just a gym. It was a stage for arrogance, a playground where boys raised on silk and silver spoons could act without fear of consequence. That morning, sunlight poured through the large glass panes, glinting on the polished wooden floors. The air smelled of varnish, disinfectant, and sweat mixed with the faint scent of expensive laundry detergent from crisp white uniforms. Students chatted loudly, laughing and shoving each other, occasionally glancing down the hallway at the lone figure crouched over his work. He was a black man in his early 20s, thin, wiry, dressed in a faded gray janitor's uniform. The brim of his worn baseball cap always pulled low, shadowing half his face. His name was Elijah, but no one here cared enough to know that. They called him every degrading name they could think of: floor boy, black monkey, dumb mutt. And yet, Elijah came every day at 6 in the morning. He swept, scrubbed, polished, head bowed, lips sealed. No complaints, no conversations. There was something about him that irritated them, not his silence alone, but the way he carried himself. Too composed, too still. As if he didn't belong in their world. As if he wasn't not aware he was supposed to feel ashamed of being there. And that quiet defiance made him the perfect target for their daily entertainment. That morning, while wiping the center of the sparring mat, the slickest spot where students usually warmed up, Elijah accidentally bumped into a water bottle by the mat's edge. The loose cap popped open, and water spread quickly across the floor. Brett, a blonde-haired boy, with a black belt and the swagger of someone who'd been handed everything since birth, turned to step back, and his foot slid.
Wait a second. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us.
He crashed to the floor in a loud, humiliating sprawl. "Damn it," Brett shouted, springing to his feet, fury blazing in his eyes as he turned to Elijah. The instructor stormed over, face flushed. "If he's injured, who's responsible for that, huh?" he barked, glaring at Elijah, as if the janitor had just ruined an entire championship match. The students chimed in instantly. "Can't even mop a damn floor, right? What's the point of people like you existing? Black trash shouldn't even be here. Just disappear already. You know where we train. Why are you even near us?" Elijah said nothing. He knelt, calmly wiping the spill, his movements unhurried, his silence unbroken. That silence enraged them. Brett stepped forward, sneering, jabbing a finger into Elijah's face. "You want to step onto the mat, huh? See if you even know left from right." The white boys laughed. "Yeah, let's see if the janitor can even stand like a man." Elijah didn't answer, didn't flinch. Slowly, he stood and stepped onto the sparring mat. The room fell still for a heartbeat, then exploded with laughter. "This idiot thinks he's somebody," Brett smirked, rolling his shoulders, cracking his knuckles. He'd been training since he was 6, had a few city-level medals to his name, and now he had the chance to humiliate the janitor in front of everyone. Across from him stood Elijah, thin, silent, the tear in his sleeve exposing a lean arm, his eyes still shadowed by the brim of his cap. The whistle blew, though this wasn't an official match. The first punch sent Elijah stumbling back to the mat's edge. "See that? He's worse than a punching bag," someone yelled, laughter echoing. Elijah pushed himself up, staggering slightly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But he didn't run. Brett's kick slammed into his chest, knocking him down again. The crowd cheered. Elijah got up. "Hey, maybe stop," one boy muttered uncertainly. But Brett didn't stop. He wanted to crush him, humiliate him, the way he always did with anyone beneath him. Then came the 6th hit, the 7th. The laughter faded. Elijah didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even raise his arms to block. He just kept standing, body swaying, eyes hidden, like a stone pillar refusing to fall. Blood ran down his chin. His right eye swelled shut. But still, he stood. Someone in the back whispered, "He's crazy." another said, voice shaky. He's not falling. What is he? Brett roared, throwing one last punch to Elijah's jaw. This time Elijah went down, hitting the mat hard. The instructor finally blew the whistle, ending the farce. The room was dead silent, every pair of eyes fixed on the battered janitor lying on the mat. His face was streaked with blood, but his hand stayed clenched into a fist. Slowly, Elijah pushed himself up. Unsteady, swaying, but he stood. He bent down, picked up the bucket he had dropped earlier, and still bleeding began to mop the floor where he had fallen. No one moved. No one spoke. For a brief second, Elijah's gaze flicked up, sweeping across the silent crowd. His eyes, dark, sharp, glinting under the shadow of his cap, cut through them like a blade before they lowered his head again. And just like that, as if nothing had happened, Elijah walked out of the Valiant dojo, leaving behind a room full of people who, for the first time, felt a strange, uneasy fear of a janitor. That night, Elijah dragged his battered body back to the boarding house. Every step sent sharp pain crawling along his ribs. His left shoulder refused to lift. His swollen right eye warped his field of vision. Yet he made no sound, offered no complaint. His room was silent as a graveyard, the only noise the faint ticking of an old clock echoing through the darkness. He didn't go to the hospital. Not because he didn't need to, but because he knew what awaited him there. Endless paperwork, the cold, judging stares of white nurses, and a medical bill worth more than weeks of scrubbing floors. So Elijah stayed home, a cheap painkiller, a wet rag pressed to his face. Pain was simply a reminder that he was still alive. He curled on his narrow bed, arms wrapped around his chest, staring at the cracked ceiling. The room was dark, but his memories came back with a cruel, almost blinding clarity. He remembered, years ago he and his twin brother Jeremiah had been two stars in the same small, grim sky. They grew up in the West Side slums where streetlights flickered and dinner plates were full. Their parents, immigrant laborers, had no money for private schools, but they gave them something else, a love for martial arts. Their cramped living room had once been a tiny training space with rubber mats on the floor, a punching bag hanging from a cracked ceiling beam, and black tape on the wall to mark their growing heights. Jeremiah was a prodigy. Every move stuck. Every kick landed perfectly. At 12, he was a state champion, recruited by a prestigious martial arts academy, praised by reporters. Elijah, however, was loser, slow, always failing his belt tests. His parents never scolded him, but the disappointment in their eyes cut deeper than any words. Twins, but worlds apart, the neighbors often said. Elijah began avoiding standing next to Jeremiah at tournaments. Though he loved martial arts, he drifted into the shadows, tired of being Jeremiah's lesser half. He skipped training, then quit competitions, then left the dojo entirely. One day, he chopped off his unruly curls, pulled a baseball cap low over his face, and disappeared from that world. No one recognized him anymore. While Jeremiah rose through the ranks of competitive martial arts, Elijah settled for odd jobs, cleaning gyms, mopping dojo floors, just to stay near the smell of sweat, near the echoes of a childhood game that now belonged to someone else. To him, victory was the cheers on the mat. To everyone else, he was just the janitor sweeping up after it. And when people didn't know who you were, they believed they could do anything to you. He endured daily humiliations, blamed for wet floors he hadn't mopped, for unlocked storage rooms he'd never touched, for missing items he'd never seen. Some days, students dumped water across the mats to check if he was cleaning properly, laughing as they made him scrub twice. Other times, his lunch was thrown out, his uniform tossed into the trash, just to see if the monkey would get mad. Elijah stayed silent, bit his tongue. He wiped the floors as if he were scrubbing his own pride out of the dirt. But every wound, every insult, settled inside him, one drop at a time, drops gathering, swelling, like a river before a flood. and yesterday's beating dragged onto the mat, pummeled in front of everyone. Should have been the breaking point. But Elijah hadn't broken. The next morning he returned to the dojo as usual. His body was bruised, his eye swollen, his movements slow. Still, he carried his bucket bent over his mop, cleaning the same floor that had soaked up his blood the day before. That quiet defiance unnerved them, so they planned something worse. At 9 that night, when the dojo was nearly empty, they called him into the storage room, saying there was a moldy smell that needed cleaning. The moment he stepped inside, the metal meter slammed behind him. The padlock clicked shut. Elijah was trapped. The room was pitch black except for a flickering bulb. No windows. No ventilation. The stench of old paint and rotting fabric hung heavy, clinging to his throat like smoke. He sat against the cold wall, his breathing growing shallower with every passing minute. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His chest tightened. His vision blurred. No one knew he was there. No one was coming. 10 o'clock. 11. Midnight. Time blurred. His thoughts drifted to childhood, to training under the dim streetlights, to Jeremiah's hand on his shoulder after his first humiliating loss. You don't need to beat anyone, Eli. You just need to beat yourself. Easy for you to say, Elijah muttered hoarsely in the darkness. Winners always say that. The air felt heavier, pressing on his lungs. His fingers tingled, his chest burned, his good eye dimmed, and for a moment, it felt as if the life was draining from him, slipping away like sand. But deep inside, through the haze and suffocating dark, Elijah clenched his jaw. Not yet. Not like this. He wasn't done. That incident in the storage room was already a week old. And a week later, Elijah returned to the dojo. Same faded work shirt, same worn-out janitor's pants, the same black baseball cap pulled low enough to nearly brush his brows. No words, no glances. He moved the mop across the floor as if he'd never been beaten to a pulp, never been locked up, never stared death in the face in the suffocating dark. The rich kids in white couldn't stand it. One smirked. Another clicked his tongue. Well, look at that. Tougher than cockroaches, huh? Figures. Black roaches don't die easy. Locked you in a storage room and you still crawl back here? Guess black trash don't know what shame is. Who let you out, anyway? A big kid named Brock kicked hard at the bucket beside him. Water splashed across Elijah's shirt and puddled on the floor. Not a flicker of reaction. Elijah bent down, picked up the mop, and wiped the spill as if it were his own fault. But when his head lifted, just for an instant, his eyes cut through the air. Cold, razor sharp. Not angry, not hateful. Something deeper, quieter. Like a predator measuring the tendons and joints of its prey. The silence lasted a beat too long. Then someone snorted, trying to break the tension. What are you staring at? One more look and I'll crack your skull. Elijah lowered his gaze. The look vanished, but then it returned every time someone shoved him, mocked him, pushed his bucket. That same fleeting glint. Gradually, unease crept over the room. The boys shifted, exchanging quick glances. It felt wrong. Like some wild animal crouching in tall grass, silent, patient, waiting. One boy whispered, "Something's off." His eyes, "They're not the same. Relax." Same old janitor. Another laughed, forcing bravado. "Wanna try him again? See how long he lasts this time?" The idea caught like dry grass in fire. They circled up, forming a ring. "Hey, mop boy," one taunted, clapping his hands. "Get on the mat. Win one round, and I'll clean for you all week." Elijah stood. A slow nod. The air chilled. He stepped onto the mat, shoulders slouched, spine curved, same unassuming posture. But, as he straightened, that meek shell cracked and fell away. The first 3 strikes ended the laughter. One pivot, one shoulder throw. So precise, Brock hit the mat before realizing he'd been thrown. No brute force, just a perfect sweep of balance, cutting his center of gravity from under him. A second boy lunged, only to find his wrist locked, twisted, and pinned in less than a breath. 3 more rushed in. 2 moves. 3 bodies on the floor. The dojo froze. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. No one could believe it. The same janitor who'd been beaten bloody a week ago now moved with terrifying control, every motion sharp and efficient. No wasted energy, no hesitation, like he wasn't fighting but teaching a silent lesson written in bruises. One kid, voice trembling, whispered, "Who are you?" The man reached up, slowly pulling off his cap. Under the overhead lights, a sharply defined black face emerged. Stern eyes, a straight nose, a presence that didn't belong to a beaten janitor. "I'm just the janitor here," he said calmly, voice as still as midnight water. "But if you want to treat martial arts like a joke, I can teach you the basics." No one spoke. It was still Elijah standing there, or at least that's who they thought. But this wasn't the Elijah they knew, not the silent punching bag, not the shadow fading into the mats. And they didn't know this wasn't Elijah at all. It was Jeremiah, Elijah's twin brother, a national-ranked martial artist, once hailed as one of the top 5 in the country. But tonight, he wasn't here as a champion. He was here as a brother. No titles, no cameras, just a man walking into the same room where his brother had been humiliated, beaten, and buried alive in silence to remind these spoiled kids what martial arts truly meant. That it wasn't about flashy kicks or heavy fists. It was about resilience, about respect, and above all, about the line no one should ever cross between human and animal. Jeremiah didn't reveal himself. He knew Elijah wouldn't want to be saved under his name. His brother didn't need pity. He only needed the others to understand that it was time to pay for what they'd done. And Jeremiah was making sure they paid in a way they'd never forget. When the dojo floor still smelled of sweat and dust, when the privileged white students hadn't yet recovered from the clean blade-sharp throws they had just witnessed, the black man with the wiry frame and does like cleavers quietly walked out. No one dared stop him. No one dared ask a single question. No farewell, no applause, just a silent shadow slipping past the flickering fluorescent lights. Gone as if he'd never been there, yet leaving a scar carved deep into every heart that had once tormented his brother. That night, the dojo's management received an anonymous email. Subject line: "The truth beneath this dojo." Attached was a video file. The footage shook slightly. Angles sometimes tilted, but the audio was clear. The images sharp. It began with cruel, mocking voices. "Black trash doesn't belong here. That janitor? He can't even tell left from right. If I owned this place, I'd have dogs mop the floor before letting someone like him touch it. Locked him in the storage room, and he still isn't dead. Black roaches never die easy." Then came clips of the bullying relentless, humiliating, and finally, the redemption. The lone black janitor standing on the mat, knocking down every tormentor, not out of vengeance or rage, but with the quiet precision of a man teaching the true meaning of martial arts and honor. The video ended with white letters on a black screen. "Strength isn't in how hard you hit. Strength is knowing when to stand up." By midnight, the clip had gone viral. News outlets replayed it. TV anchors called it breaking news. The National Martial Arts Association launched an investigation. The police got involved. Within a week, the dojo was shut down indefinitely. Its license revoked. The head coach fired for gross negligence. The students involved in the abuse were arrested for aggravated assault and unlawful confinement. Even those with influential families faced a wave of public outrage. Meanwhile, in a modest hospital room, where soft white light filtered through frosted glass, Elijah slowly opened his eyes. His body ached, head pounding. A warm hand rested over his own. Jeremiah was sitting beside him, eyes red-rimmed, face tired. You pulled me out of that storage room," Elijah croaked. Jeremiah nodded, his voice low, like a night breeze. "I saw you were hurt before. Saw something in you change. I didn't ask because I knew you wouldn't want me to." He paused, drawing a deep breath. "I'm sorry I was late. Sorry I let you endure it that long." Elijah turned his face away, his voice tight. "Why did you do it? Who asked you?" "I could have gotten out myself." Jeremiah said nothing at first. Then he pulled a folded newspaper from his pocket. The front page headline read, "Black Janitor Teaches Dojo a Lesson in Honor and True Strength." Not a single word mentioned Jeremiah. No one knew the once famous martial artist had worn a janitor's cap and stepped into that ring in his brother's place. Elijah stared at the headline, tears welling. You did all that?" "I didn't go there to take back the spotlight," Jeremiah said quietly. "I went to give you justice under your name." A silence hung between them before Elijah finally whispered, "The way I kept getting up, even after every hit, that made you proud, didn't it?" Jeremiah smiled faintly. Prouder than anything. For the first time in years, the twin brothers looked at each other without comparison, without resentment or shame. Only understanding. Only the same blood running in sync beneath their skin. A month later, a new sign hung over a small gate on the edge of the city. "Phoenix Dojo, where martial arts restores honor." Inside wasn't luxury, but laughter and determination filled the air. Black kids, victims of school bullying, those scarred by racism or left behind by society, all trained there, fists pounding mats, shouts echoing with hope. Jeremiah, the elder brother, served as head coach, teaching technique, strategy, and the philosophy of martial arts. Elijah managed operations, staff, and outreach. After years of silent work, he understood better than anyone how to build something strong from the ground up. Two brothers, two roles, one shared purpose. One evening, after class ended, Elijah grabbed his familiar mop. Jeremiah chuckled. "Put it down. You're a co-director now." Elijah grinned, eyes brighter than they'd been in years. "It's fine, I'm used to it. Besides, nobody's kicking over my bucket anymore." He pulled off the battered baseball cap he'd worn for years. The sunlight caught his face, open and unshadowed. "We're twins, Jeremiah. But now I've finally chosen my own path. Life isn't always fair to those who endure in silence, but it's in the darkness of suffering that willpower is forged into steel." Elijah, the younger brother who once lived in the shadow of his celebrated twin, learned to rise not with punches, but with unyielding resilience. And Jeremiah, the once glorious older brother, discovered that true honor isn't in fame, but in stepping back at the right moment, so the one he loves could shine. They didn't win through violence, but through truth. They didn't retaliate with hatred, but with dignity. In the end, two black men once deemed insignificant became beacons for the lost, proving to the world that justice may come late, but it will come, as long as there are souls that refuse to bow.